This year has been so powerful. From September to the end of this year, right now, when I'm recording this, it's November 20th, 2025. Let's dive in to the water dragon charge that started electrifying things beginning in September. I'll talk about this in more depth, but we'll also walk through the magnetic solar crosswave that happened in October. And then we'll walk through the rebalancing and the second dragon breath that approaches in late November through to the end of the Gregorian calendar 2025 year, with this completion or finalization of this water dragon cycle. So let's dive in. Hello, I'm Natalie Viglione, and I'm the creator of Awakening Magick, and I'm also the co-creator with my husband of Forge and Flow, which is a ministry service of multidimensional wellness. And we're creating an actual physical sanctum in Eastern Tennessee in the US. You'll find links below to explore all the things and our offerings. We'd love to connect. Beginning in September of this year, this is where we're going to start our story. And the water dragon energy was so strong. Now, I actually shared this on my website, my Substack channel, and I actually started using Instagram again after many years of not using it at all. That's another story for another day. But I had a dream time learning, but it was more of like a cellular event. Like I was physically moving through the earth with the mother of dragons. And we'll talk about that as well. What I was taught in this dream from September 6th into September 7th was very profound, because what I kept seeing is electrifying, and moving through electrifying cells awake. You could say life particles, you could say DNA, even given that DNA is essentially what we call genetic instruction manual found in our cells, within our very particles of life-giving divine essence, which dictates traits and functions. And therein lies ancestral wisdom, memory, so much more. September 7th marked a total lunar eclipse, and that was this powerful lunar eclipse season that we saw that came in. And that was associated with the Dragon Gate, is the way that I saw this. Now, because there was a partial solar eclipse on September 21st, 2025. So those intervals, as I've shared on my Awakening Magick YouTube channel and my website, quite a lot. That interval between these eclipses represents really powerful breath, powerful breath. Now this one was a huge dragon connection. And again, dragon is not a reptile. Dragon is not a beast. Dragon is basically a life-giving, life force, conscious energy of light and power and force and beauty and organic and original living architecture that breathes through earth. And so this dragon connection, when we looked, when I was looking at this previously, but if we look even back on this, the sidereal astrology, which is basically sidereal astrology, is showing you exactly what's happening in the sky at right now. Like we can take an app like Stellarium, point it to the sky, that's true sky. That's sidereal. So it's a very powerful way to see all things cosmology. That September 7th lunar eclipse occurred, known in the Vedic and sidereal astronomy, is that when the moon, which is a capacitor, which we'll talk about some other time, aligned with Rahu, it's really that Rahu that I want to focus on, because Rahu is also known as the dragon's head. And that happened, that September 7th, dragon's head Rahu happened in sidereal Aquarius. And then on the opposite end of the sky, Ketu was in Leo. But what is really fascinating is that in ancient wisdom, eclipses were always seen as times when the cosmic dragon periodically swallows the sun or swallows the moon. And in Vedic mythology, as at least from my learnings, that it's like an electromagnetic vortex point between these eclipses. So the essence of dragon was very strong in the sky and very strong in the earth's body and in my body and in others that felt this in our bodies. And the essence of dragon, has always been connected via a force holding both what we say light and dark. But we're not talking about good or bad or anything like that. But it's a complementary force and connection as it relates to consciousness. Now, Rahu, again, in Vedic astrology, isn't a planet really, but it's a shadow planet. So it's been shown as representing things like unfulfilled desires, actions that have been taken. Of course, we call that karma, but it's just things that we've done, actual actions that we've taken and more. And so Rahu, like the essence of the true dragon, became in September not a destroyer, but a liberator. So during that period, there was a huge discrepancy between sidereal, what's really happening in the sky, and Western astrology. And see, this is where it gets really nuanced. And of course, what resonates with you, but there's also true sky, and there's also just following seasonal things. So there's a big difference. And what we can really feel into here is the September 7th eclipse in Pisces was shown to be in Pisces in Western tropical astrology. However, in sidereal astrology, meaning what's happening in the sky at that time on September 7th, it was actually an eclipse that occurred in Aquarius. Now, that discrepancy is quite big because it's caused by the precession of the equinoxes over the last 2,000 years, let's just say, give or take, I guess, right? And so it's really crucial for discerning the true energetic signature of events, and more generally just in day to day, like when we're reading the skies. So the biggest thing about this was that the sidereal true sky Aquarius, what we encounter at that time frame is the water bearer. Now, this is about electrifying cellular water. And this is what I was shown during the Dreamtime learning session, or action movement session, really. So this water that we're talking about, it's not like H2O sort of water, but Aquarius is said to be ruled by Uranus, the planet governing electricity, lightning, innovation, sudden breakthroughs. And so this water that I speak of is the water that's pouring from the Aquarian vessel, representing totally electrified consciousness. And that consciousness is liquid plasma light flowing through the cosmic grid, flowing through all things into us, into the earth, and so on. Now, given our bodies are 60% plus water, whatever that number truly is, let's just say 60% or more water, really what we are living conductors, aren't we? And so we're living conductors of electromagnetic energy. And so our bodies function as individual electromagnetic power plants, basically. And our nervous systems are generating electrical pulses that connect to every aspect of our thoughts, of our emotions, our physical functions, and with all things. So during that September, and I'm spending a lot of time on this particular thing because it kind of sets the tone for where we're going. So stay with me here. So during the September dragon water eclipse time frame that began, We had an extreme global electromagnetic tuning, like planetary tuning forks, like the effect of what that would feel like, a bunch of tuning forks. And there was a bioelectric synchronization. And so that's where organic and original powerhouses, like neural networks, are aligning with God's source, eternal living origin source, through cosmic frequencies. And so basically it was a conscious network activation where there was a merger of individual awareness and collective intelligence. So what that actually creates, if we want to get nerdy with sciencey terms, because sometimes that helps to vision things out. It was like a torsion wave that moves through the planetary hydrosphere. So imagine like a rod with a torsion, like a spinning happening within it. That's what happened with the water. Now that same thing, it's like lightning in the water is what I kept being shown. And what it was doing is electrifying emotional and cellular memory. And basically it was what this does. It was flushing out the Earth's hydrosphere, ours as well. And so flushing out anything that resists conductivity. Okay. So that was really powerful. Now, then we walked into October, then we had a magnetic solar crosswave that took place. What that means is when the two great lights in our sky, which is the sun, now we have the lunar aspect, the moon. Now, before we go too deep on that, I'm going to spend some other video time talking about the capacitor that the moon is, and more insight on that, because there's a whole lot of stuff around that to kind of weed through. And so anyway, two great lights. We have a moon, essentially, that is now beginning to reflect the our sun, the logos, solar logos, once again, as it was always meant to do. And so this is why it's getting so much brighter. I've been watching this for years and it's fantastic. Anyway, side point. But what happened in October, early October, is that solar crosswave. What happens is those two great lights of the Earth, the sun and the lunar return current, started to pulse in opposite rhythm for a powerful time, which felt like explosions. So what that was really doing is resetting so that both the sun and the moon can synchronize with the new solar rhythm that's beginning to pulsate to life once again. Okay, so we'll talk about the moon some other time, but that was powerful, really powerful. And in fact, I don't know about you, but the 8th and the 9th is when that happened. A lot of things happened during that time, as well as there were some full moons and stuff. But anyway, that solar crosswave was really powerful. So that explosion didn't feel so great. Like maybe oil and water with certain people, and just kind of, it was intense. So then at the end of October, we walked through the time-honored organic solar calendar year holy time, which I'm speaking on this from an ancient druid perspective. So we had Beltane happen in the southern hemisphere, and then we have Samhain happened and this is October 31st and November 1st. And then we had a Samhain happen in the northern hemisphere. And that is a very powerful threshold that happens every single year. So essentially, just to go over that really quickly, because it was a powerful time. So we had all this, plus we went through this threshold at that time, which then we'll get into other details. But the northern hemisphere, okay, Samhain, that is the final harvest of the season, and it begins to spiral inward. So the veil between the worlds grows really thin, because what is happening is Samhain is drawing the consciousness inward, and the field moves from radiance to reflection, from expression to listening. Then, alternatively, on the other side, the southern hemisphere, it was Beltane. Now at that same time, they're spiraling outward, awakening, life force rising, creation and fertility or blooming. And then, so Beltane is expanding things outward again. So it's the same current exhaling as creation, flowering, etc. So you have Samhain's dark fire, which is the alchemy of decay and memory and inward spiraling. And then the Beltane has that bright fire, the ignition, the igniting of form. So you have two halves of what we call our earth, but it's really one sacred fire ceremony. And that energy that contracts in the north as Samhain expands in the south as Beltane. And together what happens is that's keeping the planetary resonance really balanced. So that's always a beautiful, it's Samhain. I'm in the northern hemisphere. It's my favorite time of year. It speaks to me. So we had that happen. So now we walk through November. So at the time of this recording, it's November 20th, 2025. And on November 25th and November 26th, we're going to walk into the second dragon breath. Now this window is going to reactivate the same exact torsion pattern that opened in September that I talked about. But now we're going to be running through the spinal channel of the earth. This torsion is going to be running through the spinal channel of earth rather than in the planetary hydrosphere, which is the water aspect. And it's going to pulse and move through essentially that vertical axis of planetary memory. So late November marks what we could say is a temporal node where the water dragon comes back into play here, and it's going to be about the embodiment of fluidic gnosis. Again, we're talking deep cellular memory, and there's going to begin a rehydrating, if we will, of this just gives me chills talking about it. Rehydrating of the planetary spinal channel from deep within the core of Earth. So you can think about, Earth's crystalline, weaving, braiding, lattice, all that, all those words about the weaving crystalline core and inner aspect of Earth. All of that is going to be rehydrated. And then, of course, what happens is that is going to come then upward to the mid-planes of the body field of Gaia, Earth. So the Earth's axis is not a pole like the way that we think about it. But again, this always getting this spiraling and braiding images, right? But it is a braided spiral of living memory currents. Now, the axis is often, mythically remembered as the tree of life. Yggdrasil is that beautiful tree in Ireland, for example. The axis mundi. So there's all these different words, right? But that isn't mythical. It is a braided spiral of living memory. And that is going to be reawakened via these pulsing breaths. So this water, that's what the water dragon does. And so it's a harmonic filament that is going to be weaving in blue ray memory. So this is about solar feminine restoration. And there's going to be a lot of these Atlantean, Lemurian chord reconnections that happen as part of this. And because the water dragon is rising in ancient memory and flowing again, because this is about, it's primordial and lunar really in nature, like the original reason for lunar currents, which we'll have to talk about again another time. But the water dragon, just like in September, going through the spinal, you can imagine, think about your own body and what happens when your spine is getting rehydrated. It changes everything, right? Everything. And so the water dragon moves through the deep aquifers of the soul, both of the planet and of course of those who walk it. So this breath, this dragon breath, the same thing that this dream time visions and learnings of what this powerful time frame really looks like that started in September, begins to spiral upward from deep within. So coiling through the earth's spine like a serpent, remembering its origin. And this is the Emerald Serpent year. So you can see how that all connects. And that's actually a video that I have on the channel too, is where this year began and how it is fulfilled in that truth. It's very beautiful. Okay, so late November is bringing that second breath. So we've moved through Samhain and Beltane, and what it's going to feel like is like a soft power that's reshaping, but there's not force to the reshaping. There's going to be a lot of rehydration around memory at the base of the earth, where earth dreams, essentially. We could say that astral body of the earth. And so cleansing and rehydrating all of that, because it needs it after some intense things that have been happening for years now, which I have other videos on here talking about what has been taking place in that dreaming body of earth. Now, this is going to initiate and serve as initiation of the root within humans, within animals, within trees, within stones, because everything needs to be rehydrated with pure, original, source, cellular water. And there will be a restoration of undistorted flow between the inner sun within us and also the true inner moon channels that always should have been in the way that they were originally created. And so as noted before, when this path really began in September, early September, this is not dragon and destruction, but this is disillusion. So it's clearing stagnation and spirals through the emotional layer of the planetary field and the personal field to restore what we could say is the breath of the waters, and those waters being remembered. So this isn't a typical annual occurrence, by the way. This is not something that happens every year. This is just this year. This has just been happening this year. It is part of a very long cycle of harmonic correction. Not a seasonal, not even a solar year-based pattern. This is a harmonic correction that's taking place this year in this water dragon cycle. It's absolutely profound. And so what this is doing is, this is actually part of the restoration of the feminine breath lines. Okay, like soft magnetics, aqua codes. This is rethreading the spinal waters of earth. So think about all the rivers, think about the aquifers, think about all the deep emotional waters of humanity. Think of the cleansing that the earth needs in that regard. Whew. And it's also a planetary attunement to the Blu-ray template. Okay, and this is held very, very deeply in the dragon lines and also in the inner earth crystalline matrices. And so what this is going to feel like in our bodies would be something like, of course, we're going to have our own unique, depending on vibrations and how one is truly in their body. It can feel like a sudden surge of a lot of energy. But on the alternative side, again, depending on the vibration, the purity of the body in general, and the layers and the levels, it could also be on the other side. It could come through as great fatigue. Because what is going to be happening is magnetic releases from the sacral and the solar plexus in your body. That's where we will be, where we will feel this cleansing, this, or we should say, rehydrating of the spine of Earth. And so what can assist is movement. So the ancient practice of Qigong is about spiral movements. It's soft movement, but powerful movements. That practice was actually always created to be able to anchor and move energy in the field. This goes into a much larger conversation, but that Qigong is powerful. And it can help actually move the energy and have that energy ripple through your body in a way that feels really good. Also, keeping laughter at the top of your list, because anything that brings laughter actually really helps to anchor or ground the solar fire, which there will be a whole lot of that coming in. So as we cross the dragon spine of the Earth in these final weeks of 2025, culminating really at the end of December 21st through 24th, which, going back into the organic solar calendar, this is Yule in the northern hemisphere, and the summer solstice is going to be happening in the southern hemisphere. Now, what begins is going to be a huge architectural reset of the planetary scalar coherence. And so what does that mean? Biggest thing is that 2026 is not going to be a continuation of what we've been seeing. Now, this water dragon cycle is where, and this dream and everything that I'm sharing with you all stemmed from that dream time sharing and what I've been feeling through my body and what I'm sharing now. And so it's what this is forming is that 2026 is going to be a completely new lattice, weaving, framing, a whole new world beneath our feet. And what's really imperative is to know that in that time frame, the end of December, we can, and this is even for both hemispheres, there's going to be like this silence between the tides, if we will. So from about December 1st to the end of December, it's going to be a really great time for all of us, no matter where we live, a really great time for inner listening. Now, those are already the energies that most of us are sitting within in the northern hemisphere anyway. But again, because this is a planetary thing, this is something that everybody is going to feel. It doesn't matter where you live. And so for everyone, it's going to be a time of inner listening. And so it's also going to be a time for making, weaving your field to match what is coming. And if you rest, the earth will rest with you. So again, the dream with the water dragon is the mother of dragons. The mother of dragons is Tiamat, and this is a consciousness. And what this pulse and what this consciousness, if we will, encoded since September all has to do with memory. It all has to do with cellular purification, more and more dissolving of the false scaffolding that has really been built up around the organic, or on top of the organic and on top of the original in this earth. So what now is going to begin, and we are going to see this so powerfully in 2026, is the crystallizing of the new architecture. That architecture responds to breath and is woven directly through eternal living source. Sorry, I'm really excited. And woven directly through eternal living source aligned intention. So as 2026 dawns, the breath of the water dragon enters again. And again, not just the planetary spine, but also into ours, into the living bodies of this earth. And the way that you feel your environment, interact with others, how you move through time, it's all going to shift. And the architecture will grow like mycelial tendrils. Think of the underground, think of roots, right? So those tendrils will be felt actually before they're seen. So I just want to drop in some things that I've been feeling that have been coming up about 2026 in general, and as it's being remembered through me, I want to just share with you now. So again, as with any video, take what feels good, and if it doesn't resonate with you, then that's okay. But one big thing is many of you will find that all of your output, meaning if you're in full alignment, if you're in coherence, because what that really means is alignment, is full alignment with source, with God's source. You can say whatever words you would like, but finally it's going to be mirrored out in the field. So what that means is reciprocity begins. Now, I have been feeling this so much, and I've spent many a time crying, literally crying, because I remember what it feels like to have reciprocity in this world. Like the old, like the organic, like the original. So imagine that coming back into this earth. Holy wow. That's all I got to say. So your projects, transmissions, energies around vibrant wellness practices, that if you felt like you've been kind of echoing into the void, and if you're in full alignment, you're going to begin to see a return of flow, because the field of the earth is going to have been stabilized enough to reciprocate. So that's something in store in 2026. Another thing that I'll talk about some other time, but I just want to drop here, is that for those in what I call forge and flow, that's the reason why we called it that, forge and flow or divine union partnerships that are together in this now time, there's a lot coming, and I'm going to talk about that another time, because there's a lot of stuff to weed through on that whole concept of what these partnerships actually are and what they mean. Okay, another thing in 2026 is you may even begin to feel planetary responses with the weather, with animals, the dragon lines in this world. Of course, some call them ley lines, but they're dragon breath lines, truthfully. And those are going to really begin to shift around your home and your own personal field. So you could say the field outside and the field within. And so the earth is going to be changing. Those dragon lines are changing. They are shifting. And that is huge. That is huge, because that is about the purification, that is about restoration, that is about regeneration. Though there's a lot of things that we still must do. We'll talk about that some other time. But this stuff isn't going to be done for us. These are assisting, but we have to assist in this too. So there's action here as well. And then one other thing is time disentanglement is going to be a huge theme in 2026. So, for example, if in your life you have felt like you have these repeating loops, what you're going to see is more and more this desire to see ways out, move out of those, and to rewrite. So that as the time unravels further and further, there's going to be more of the temporal bleed throughs. And if you've had these moments, these are incredible, and they're sometimes a lot. And basically it's when your, for lack of better words, your past and your future selves begin to guide you now, because time isn't linear. And so you are literally, it's almost like the paper dolls, right? How when you do a paper doll and they come out like this, it's like that. And it's so intense. These are powerful, and they have, what comes from them is so much clarity. I had this one last year sometime, or the year before, I forget. I think it was last year, early last year. And what it felt like was I was being stretched between all these versions of myself, between childhood and adulthood. And it was so strong and intense that I almost felt like I was going to throw up, I remember. But the clarity that came from seeing that, what I was basically shown is there was this emotion that I was still in my layers, in my geometry. And I thought, I've worked on that though. Like, come on. No. There was more. There was more layers. There was more dust in there that I had to clean out. And so it came up. I was able to I make flower essences as a flower essence alchemist. I whipped one up for myself and did the deep cleaning of that emotion. So cleaning out our layers and levels even further. That is actually how we match the vibration of all the things happening. That's how we stay well, vibrant, and feeling so, so good. Remineralization, and I mean, I could go on and on, but there's links below if you want to see. And I'm not just saying this because these are things that I do. This is truly we have to match the vibration that is rising, right? And ensure that we have coherence in our fields. So that time just keeps unraveling even more, if you can imagine it, because I know many of us for years have been like, I don't know, what day is it? Even though we are doing things every day. But now, okay, so there's a lot more that I could share, but I'm going to stop now and I'll share more later. I think this is good. As you can probably feel, it's exciting. There's going to be miracles. Miracles are going to accelerate where alignment exists, okay? Where there's dissonance, where there's incoherence, now those are going to dissolve more quickly. That's the interesting thing. But 2026 opens as a planetary year of anchoring the new living architecture. This began with the water dragon pulse in September. And so may we be empowered to walk into the beloved pulse of the primal waters that will change so much in the coming weeks and in this coming year of 2026. Absolutely no doubt. All right, save this video in case, share this with others who may resonate with, and thank you so much for watching. I look forward to sharing all of these other bits and pieces with you as I remember, as it pulses through me, and remembering with you.